Martin,
Yes, here.
trustee Cates,
Here.
trustee Baldacci,
Here.
trustee Loring.
Here.
And that's your committee.
Thank you very much. I would remind meeting participants to please keep their mic muted when they're not speaking. And the first agenda item is student representative discussion. I don't see any students on my screen, but Jeff, is there anything we need to discuss?
We wanted to offer a couple of just housekeeping items, Trustee McMahon, as we got going here. Maybe that'll give us just a minute to see if we pick up any students. I wanted to say, for the benefit of the group, a couple of things. Number one, for tabs 6 and 7 on your agenda today, the financial implications of new programs discussion, and then the update on 90 credit applied bachelor's degree programs. There were no attachments for those two items by design. So we've been asked to consider a mechanism by which the provost and I can work together under the tab 6 topic to build in more of a explanation of the cost of delivering new academic programs, akin to what is done increasingly as universities bring forward their budget presentations, talking about the cost of the delivery of those programs. So we've had exactly one half of one discussion about this with the provost. We'll have more, but we do want to give a chance for the trustees to just share their thoughts on this and have a brief discussion today. So no attachment because no plan in place yet for that one. And then for tab 7, we're 3.5 weeks out from the last board meeting. I will be sharing a few updates about discussions I've had with various groups across our system, but my plan has been to share written updates for the public session of each succeeding board meeting over the next several meetings at least. So a verbal update today, and again, that's by design. You're not missing an attachment there. The second item, Trustee Alexander, please.
I defer to the group on this comment, but I was pretty sure the board expected Academic and Student Affairs Committee to handle the actual implementation phase of the generic idea that was presented at the last board meeting. Am I missing something here?
Trustee Alexander, what generic idea are you referring to?
Oh, I'm sorry. The 90 degree program idea. I thought ASA would develop the criteria and review the actual proposed programs and discuss the policies to implement what you described at the last board meeting.
So as a friendly reminder, we'll be following the established existing curricular development and approval process in every respect. I do owe the trustees more detail about how we will govern enrollment such that we are attracting adult degree completers and only adult degree completers for this pilot cohort of programs. But in all other respects, this will come through ASA, just as you described, Trustee Alexander, but without any additional or separate or different curricular approval processes attached to it.
Right, but I think that we expected a presentation to either this committee or the board, and I defer to other trustees as to how they would like to do this. I mean, I'm not saying I have a firm view, but we would expect some description of criteria to govern the development of the pilot programs and the methodology to actually measure the results of the pilot programs. So I was thinking that discussion would happen here, and I'll defer to others on that issue.
If this is helpful, Trustee Alexander, I can certainly speak with Trustee McMahon about this. If there's anything outside of our current existing curricular approval process that the trustees would specifically like to see, beyond the guardrails that we have discussed previously around enrollment, I'd be happy to provide that to the trustees and share it at ASA and or at a full board meeting, whatever is deemed appropriate. We don't have an intention to develop these programs outside of our existing process, and the one-page protocol that our primary accreditor NETCHI has shared with us, guiding our provosts and faculty in their work together in developing these programs.
Thanks, Jeff. I see we have a couple of students on, at least one. Trish, sorry, go ahead. You're on mute. You're on mute, Trish.
You're on mute.
You'd think I'd know this by now. I do think, to your point, Jeff, it's important to have a statement about what the 90 credit hour is, how it doesn't detract from undergraduate traditional education, that it's a value added, and those guardrails, I think, do need to be in writing before, so they give some guidance for ASA.
Thank you. So I'll do two things. First, I'll share the protocol, the publicly posted protocol that NETCHI's already developed. I'll share that with the trustees. Chair Riley, I'll also share it with our faculty board representatives and our student board representatives so they can see it. It's a one-page document. Helpfully, and this is point number 2, that document compels us to write some of those guardrails into our actual proposals. So while our proposal development and approval process is the same, you will see our accreditors' requirements for how we describe these programs built into both the intent to plan phase and the full proposal phase of the program. So when we get to the point where we're at ASA and the trustees have the program proposals in front of them, they'll see what we owe our accreditor built into what they're reading by way of proposals. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. If we could get back to the agenda, oh, sorry, Roger. You're on mute, Roger.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had another question, but this is later in the agenda. I'm happy to wait till it comes up in its normal
Okay.
course.
But let's do that then.
Thank you.
Student representative discussion, Jeff, do you want to handle that?
Sure, I'll just start by reminding our students in the friendliest way possible. We didn't have a specific topic identified prior to the meeting today. And of course, if any topic that you do share, please make sure it's not something that's pertaining to one student, in particular, one student by name, or any ongoing concern or issue with any particular student or any named party. I'll put it that way. And thank you in advance for remembering that. Trustee McMahon, I think we're the victims of a post-Super Bowl 9 a.m. ASA meeting.
I think you're probably right. Okay, faculty rep discussion, Jeff.
Same for our faculty representatives. I don't believe we identified a specific topic, but of course, any and all thoughts. I know that Lisa LeDuc was with us on my screen a minute ago. I believe Ivan Manav is here. And I'm racing around the screen trying to figure out who's with us, but Ivan, please.
Thank you. Good morning. The 90 credit degrees, I wanted to raise a question here. My colleagues asked me once we got the message from the chancellor about the process and the wording and the discussion at the board meeting. And on this decision, I have to tell them that this was in the chancellor's report. It was reported at the board meeting, but it wasn't on the agenda, certainly not at the open meeting. So I recall trustees previously saying 90 credit degrees. We have looked into that. The board hasn't decided anything. And then now it's a done deal. So I do want to ask a question about process, not substance. I have not heard grumblings about faculty on the substance of the 90 credit degrees. Actually, there is interest in submitting proposals from several groups. But I do want to make sure that we have a process where faculty participates in major decisions like this. And yes, there were preliminary discussions here and there, but the finality of the news came as a surprise. And I do want to say we are here to help. Thank you.
Yes, you want to respond?
I'm happy to speak to that. So for the benefit of all trustees and to be as responsive to Professor Manev as possible, I've been very candid with our Faculty Governance Council and also with faculty groups I spoke with last fall and this spring, earlier this spring. We have been in no position to say anything definite about the potential development of 90 credit programs prior to securing a green light from our trustees to pursue a pilot cohort of no more than 5 programs total across our system, directed at an audience of adult degree completers. So I shared that with the faculty board representatives just prior to the January meeting, shared it with the Faculty Governance Council before and after the January meeting, and in different conversations with faculty senates and assemblies in the fall, and with individual and groups of faculty in the fall and this past month. So with all respect to our process here, we have done everything we can to learn as much as we can about what's happening regionally and nationally with these programs, but have not been in a position to initiate any kind of a process prior to ensuring that we had the support of our trustees to do so. Having said that, I mean, I've already scheduled 5 of my 8 spring semester visits with our faculty senates and assemblies. I expect to have the last 3 scheduled later this week. And we'll also be meeting with the Faculty Governance Council monthly and many other venues, including, of course, our faculty board representatives, to share updates and to invite participation in this process. I will say that from my perspective on the outside looking in, there appeared to have been many more conversations among faculty or groups of faculty at some of our universities, especially this past fall semester, than at others. And of course, given the different sizes of our universities, it's probably easier in some places to have a conversation involving many or even most faculty than it is at other places. But to the extent possible, we have been as communicative as we could, as quickly as we could, with the provisos that I've just named being in place. I hope that's helpful.
Can you just add the NETCHI component to this, Jeff?
The NETCHI component it requires that we identify a prefix. So these will be applied programs in their respective fields. Applied this, applied that, applied this, applied that, to differentiate them from other 120 credit degree programs. We're required to offer a pathway into 4-year degree completion. So if a student gets a year or a year and a half into a 90 credit program and would like to move into a 120 credit program, we have to build that into the program proposal itself. We have to market publicly the differentiation. This gets to Trustee Chair Riley's point that she's made a couple of times, and she and NETCHI are on the same page. We have to market very publicly and show students in our materials and in how we speak to them about these programs the distinction between 90 credit and 120 credit programs, including the fact that it's too early regionally and nationally to know the outcome of these programs, what employers will think, and so on. So we have a concise but very clear set of directives from our accreditor that we will be building right into what we do in developing a pilot cohort of programs.
Great.
I do think we may need to go review our minutes and take a look at this. We absolutely did give the green light to proceed. We absolutely did express interest in this pilot program with limited guide rails. I think we need to just revisit whether the board needs to take some generic action on these guidelines, or is it adequate to leave it just to the committee ASA process? And I think we can do that offline, and Ivan raises a good point, and we can take another look at it.
Joe?
Yeah, I wanted to add a little bit to this. There's been a lot of conversation going on about this. It was a little bit of a surprise when it came out, even though we have been talking about it. Even now, Jeff, as you're talking about this, I'm learning even more, so we just started to figure out what the target audience was. So adult learners coming back. And then now transitioning into a 4-year degree, that's a new thing. If we're suggesting we can transition into a standard 4-year degree, then sort of by default that changes the target audience in a way, So there's a lot of folks that are just wondering, are we going to offer a 90 eventually, not now, but a 90 credit degree to a student just coming out of high school or what have you, or a 120 credit degree, and they can decide along the way. And so I think there's a lot of clarification that should happen with this as we move forward. And, short, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper summary would be great on this stuff. That would allow us to better clarify this with our respective senates and colleagues on our campuses. So, for all the great intent to be as transparent as possible, something is still getting lost in translation here. So there's just a lot of questions about this. That was it.
Yeah, you want to respond?
I'll just thank Joe. That's helpful to have as a guide for next steps. And I will say again, Joe, and I want to be careful here. So we amassed a considerable amount of information just by virtue of following what was going on elsewhere in the region and nationally in the fall. And again, we have a couple of ideas about how to share additional information. It was important for us to wait and make sure we had the support of the trustees. And now we are both attempting to work with faculty through their provosts who are developing concepts for these pilot cohorts and share more information as quickly as we can.
So I've got another thing, just stuff to put on your radar that has come up in this regard. So for instance, if we're offering this 90 credit option, in particular targeted at this point to adult learners, then the question about life experience credits came up. So now you have a fewer credits required, and then how much of that are we going to allocate to life experience? And at some point, you have to ask yourself: is this actually a degree, applied or otherwise, from the university? And that's the kind of questions that we're starting to see. And so, yeah, and again, I want to reiterate that I recognize that this is still all new to us, and you're getting this stuff out now. But I'm also anticipating looking forward to what's happening with this.
Thank you.
I guess the summary would be more to come, Joe. Lisa, welcome back.
Just back for a little bit. I'm having surgery on Friday, but my point is on a different topic, so I would want anyone else to chime in. I know we have Tim's here and Clyde. I'm not sure if any other faculty reps wanted to speak about the 90 degree before I mention something else.
Guys, anybody else on 90 degree? I see some shaking head, so go ahead. Tim.
Yeah, nothing new to add, just similar concerns and questions have been coming from UMA faculty about the 90 degree initiative, 90 credit degree initiative, and looking forward to more information, clarification, and whatnot.
Okay, thanks. Lisa, go ahead.
So before I go to my other point, I actually thought of something I wanted to say about it. I'm I guess I'm surprised that NETCHI is requiring the term applied. My understanding in the world of academia, and especially in marketing and standards, the word applied on a degree often is kind of a red flag that this is kind of maybe a diploma mill. Like the word applied has a lot of baggage with it. I'll just say that. I know that that's not our decision. I'm really surprised that NETCHI is requiring that. That's just my opinion. And then the other thing I just want to say is a bit more personal. I'm going to keep doing check-ins at the last ASA when this body passed the program of criminal justice at the University of Maine. There was a commitment to have a report this coming summer of how they were going to work with UMPI criminal justice faculty in delivering that. And I just wanted to let you all know that there has been no outreach, and that's not a surprise to me, but I will keep letting you know how it's going. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
I'll respond on both points. Lisa, thank you for both of those comments. The first is NETCHI is requiring a designator or prefix of some kind that differentiates these programs from 120 credit programs. Most of the universities that we've seen so far coming forward have chosen to use the word applied. I just had a conversation with the registrars last week, and the registrars also noted that there are some universities that use in the actual name of the degree a different designator, BAAS or I'm getting confused, BABS versus applied in the name. So we've chosen to follow what we've seen predominantly both in the region and nationally, and look at the word applied as the way to differentiate these programs so far. On the second point, I'm delighted to say that I'm more than happy to remind Provost Volin and his team of the need to be working with UMPI criminal justice faculty and to generate that report this summer as obligated to do so. So thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm just going to say to the board, maybe there's an opportunity here for the humane system to differentiate themselves and not use the word applied. It's a little bit more of a red flag in a graduate degree because it usually infers that there was no thesis or original research. It was more of an internship. But I think there might be an opportunity to make ourselves different than other schools. Just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Other comments from the faculty? Seeing none, let's move to the next agenda item, an update on the transfer between the University of Maine system and Maine Community College system partnership, and Jeff, Heather, and Jamie.
Thank you, Trustee McMahon. Just to add to degrees of difficulty today, Heather Ball is out sick, so I will be subbing for Heather, helping Jamie. Jamie and Heather are far better versed in this presentation than I am, but I will be leading off and then jumping in at a couple of points to help Jamie, who probably doesn't actually need my assistance, but there you go. So my opening remark is simply this. I had a meeting with one of our faculty senates last fall, and I was in a very good way challenged by a member of the faculty saying, would you please stop talking about seamless transfer? It's never going to happen. And I took that to heart. And there are faculty frustrations out there. There have been for a long, long time, decades, about structural impediments to transfer in particular, but also registration processes more broadly. I am pleased to say that between the work that our CIO, Robert Placido, and his team have done on Unified Catalog Project, Unified Course Search, degree planning, and related elements of that overall effort on the IT side, between our commitment to adopt a modern set of software products in student records and the work that Jamie and Heather have done with our Maine Community College system counterparts, the three pillars of what can be a seamless transfer process are increasingly in place and ready to move forward. Will we ever have any process at any of our universities or as a system as a whole that is administratively flawless 100% of the time? I doubt it, but we are moving and improving to a point where we can say we have a transfer process, a registration process that does not feature any known structural impediments. And that will be a massive step forward for our system and more importantly for our students. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jamie and ask her to begin with this presentation.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that very much. As Jeff said, Heather is very, very unfortunately unable to be with us today. She does send her regrets. And so please bear with me as I try to be as eloquent as she would be in talking about her sections. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jamie Ballinger. I'm the Director of Academic and Enrollment Initiatives here with the University of Maine System, which means part of my job is working with Maine Community College System as we implement these pathways between our two systems to enable students to seamlessly move from their associate's level education to their baccalaureate and beyond. Today, I am going to give you a very brief update on how that progress is going and how we as the University of Maine System are working to strengthen the ties and bonds between our system and Maine Community College System. I know you're going to have lots of questions, so the actual presentation will be relatively brief and we will open up the floor and answer as many of those questions as we possibly can. But first, I'm going to go ahead and launch it right back to Jeff to talk a little bit about how this project does tie directly back to the strategic plan, and then we'll launch right into the details.
Thanks, Jamie. I can do this pretty straightforwardly. So our trustees and our presidents and vice chancellors and chancellor in particular in several areas argued for improvement of transfer pathways to be built into the strategic plan. And in particular, as you see here, an explicit focus on improving Maine Community College System transfer. I've heard it from Trustee McMahon, from several other trustees who have knowledge of and ties to various community colleges within that system and also the Maine Community College System as a whole. We have been in the past, I think, missing an opportunity to bring more students forward through a better mousetrap, a better pathway between their system and ours. And we think we are on the cusp of, in several respects, achieving that now. So Jamie, thank you for that.
Thank you. And coming directly from the strategic plan, we actually sat down and spent a lot of time identifying where those structural challenges between our two systems actually lie. We had a series of cross-system discussions between leadership, talking to staff and faculty directly. We discussed this with the transfer advisors on both Maine Community College System and here internally within UMS to identify those key barriers that our students, our faculty, and our staff are facing as we try to create this strong, cohesive relationship between the two systems. Ultimately, communication was the number one challenge, followed very closely by having a keen understanding of those transfer agreements. And then finally, from the perspective of the student, having a solid handoff between Maine Community College System and the University of Maine System in terms of advising. And I do want to focus on that one because ultimately that is the key relationship for those students that we're working with to be able to persist toward graduation, to be retained and persist to their graduation. We need that advising relationship to be very strong. Our challenges did lead directly to several goals. All of those have collaboration at their heart. Number one is, of course, that cross-system collaboration directly, as well as building those advising support networks and looking closely at those pathways, both in the admissions process and toward degree completion. So I'm going to, in the next few slides, break down each one of those goals and give you just a brief update of our progress to date on all of these. Ultimately, I want this to lead up to a discussion about the Transfer Maine initiative, which was launched in July, and I'm sure all of you have been familiar with that and have a few questions on how it's going. So coming out of the cross-system engagement goal, we sat down with Maine Community College System representatives all across the system to create a new way of communicating between our two groups. From those conversations, we heard lots and lots of stories from advisors, from staff members who were hearing from students Yes, I'm trying to transfer, but I don't know where to go. I'm trying to transfer, but I can't find the information that I need. I'm trying to transfer, but it looks like the transfer pathway that I originally thought I was going to be taking is going to require me to have an extra year or even 2 of coursework when I go to the University of Maine system, and I don't want that. That was the true challenge that we were facing. And that's where our conversations started. So to mitigate some of those challenges, particularly the one where students are telling me, I don't know who to talk to, we have initiated a cross-system communication change. These are meetings, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, depending on the time of the year, where our 2 systems representatives are communicating with each other. They are sitting down, they are talking through some of these challenges. We are now able to point students to dedicated staff members who are equipped and qualified to handle their particular question at each of the 7 Maine Community College system campuses and each of the 7 University of Maine system campuses. We have representatives from every single institution, typically more than 1 representative, as part of this communication pathway, so that we can answer those questions as they come up quickly and with decisive kind of information for the student. A big part of this has also been creating a series of websites that are shared between the 2 systems. So the information is the same for a student, whether they are still an associate student with Maine Community College system, or whether they are mid-process on transferring to UMaine system or beyond. And that allows us to quickly and consistently update information between the 2 systems. The staff here at University of Maine system and the staff at Maine Community College system are being trained each day, each week on how to handle students as they are going through this transfer process. Now, I want to back up and say that we have some faculty and staff who have been deeply involved with this from the beginning, and I want to give them all of the accolades I possibly can. They are the ones who have been our guideposts for this process. They are the ones who know these transfer relationships already, and they have done an amazing job of helping us to identify those structural challenges and work through them one at a time. However, not everyone has been able to have that deep, intensive level of training. We are working to rectify that fact. So we are working with all of the staff and all of the transfer advisors to ensure that they are fully trained on both the MCCS programs and, of course, our own pathway programs that are leading from those. We are also helping to communicate more regularly with the students who have been identified or who have self-identified as wanting to take advantage of transfer opportunities. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a few minutes. And of course, back to advising. We have created a warm handoff between the advisors at MCCS and UMS. That warm handoff means that there is consistent communication for the student and between their 2 advising offices so that the student is not surprised in the process. So our third goal was around creating seamless transfer admissions. And this is where the heart and the soul of this entire project land. Well, I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit that we didn't have a strong handle on which articulations were out there and available to students for a very long time. Right now, there are 143 active articulations. Sometimes we use the word articulations, sometimes we use the term transfer agreements. 143 of them active within the University of Maine system. That is articulations at all 7 campuses. They are department to department. So an articulation might be the Associate of Science in Business Administration at Eastern Maine Community College, partnering with UMaine for a Bachelor of Science. And the articulation would lay out the map for the student to move from the associate to the bachelor's degree. Those were negotiated institution by institution, which means that they were not housed cohesively in any one place. That was our very first project. We needed a firm handle on all of these articulations. And more importantly, articulations have expiration dates. And so we were not being very good, either us or Maine Community College System, at identifying when those articulations needed to be reviewed and renegotiated and reaffirmed between our two systems. So it's been a lot of work. However, we are in a very good place at this point. We know where they are. We have shared documentation between the two systems so that we're working from common places, common documents as we continue to move forward. We also have been spending a lot of time looking at best practices nationally. This is not a problem that's unique to the state of Maine, Maine Community College System, or the University of Maine system. Other systems have been very open to talking to us about the challenges that they face. There are lots of resources out there, and we are trying our best to follow those best practices as we move through this entire process. Barbara, I'm happy to take a question as we go, since it's timely.
Yes, it's this slide here. Could you explain the difference between an articulation agreement or transfer agreement, and we have 143 of them, and the 95-degree programs to receive direct admission offers? Thank you.
Yeah, happily. And actually, if you would bear with me, I will answer that question directly on our very next slide as I start to talk about Transfer Maine. Perfect, thank you. So that actually, what a great segue, thank you, Barbara, is leading to the Transfer Maine project. So we had to do lots of background information to prepare ourselves for an overhaul of all of our pathways between MCCS and UMS. All of the work that I just outlined was the preparation phase to be ready to implement the Transfer Maine project. The Chancellor signed Transfer Maine in July of this year, and we immediately started putting all of these efforts into effect. Transfer Maine is a pathway for Maine Community College students who have completed their associate's degree to move seamlessly into a bachelor's degree and beyond here at the University of Maine system. It is a direct admission effort, meaning that these students who self-identify as wanting to transfer are direct admitted. They do not have to fill out an application. They don't have to submit letters of recommendation. Their entire file is handed from MCCS over to UMS seamlessly with very little effort on the part of the student. And by opting into Transfer Maine, a student is also given joint advising between the two systems. So the student's advisor at MCCS communicates with advisors at UMS to ensure that the student is being taken care of every step of the way. That is the warm handoff. We are making it as easy for these students to move from one stage of their education to the next as possible. So Transfer Maine builds on those existing transfer pathways, and that is the 180 articulation agreements that we outlined in the last slide. It has that joint advising, that warm handoff piece, and it's that seamless transfer after completing the associates. We are not targeting students who are in their first semester of community college. This is directly for students who are planning to complete their associates and go on for their bachelor's degree. Now, the 95 is identifying the most popular pathways currently between Maine Community College System and the University of Maine system. And that is in areas like the biological sciences and of course business. Business is a huge one. Technology, education, those majors that are outlined here. These were identified in partnership between Maine Community College System and the University of Maine system leadership as the ones with the most potential to be successful, the greatest number of students who we think would be interested, and the largest body of articulations that can currently guide these students and serve as the maps as we lay this out. We are in our first few weeks. We just launched this in July. The first communications went out to Maine Community College System students in October and November. So we plan to expand the number of programs that have this transfer main pathway over the next year. However, we had to start small enough that we could keep a firm handle on it. So we did identify the 95 pathways that we felt had the most chance to be successful right off the bat. Now, you will notice that nursing is not included, and you'll notice that engineering is not included in that early list of pathways. It's not to say that they won't be in the future. It's just that those are harder programs for us to create those seamless pathways with. Number one, because they tend to have selective admissions. They are already full for our universities. And number two, they are just much more complicated relationships to help a student move from one to the other. So for this first round, we want just a little bit more simple, and we will continue to expand that moving forward. So we have talked about the process and the communications and how we built this program. This slide is about how we will measure outcomes, which is also a key part of both the strategic plan and how we like to operate internally. Some of you might be familiar with this particular graph. I'm sorry, the resolution is not great between the gray and the blue and the green. However, you can look at your meeting materials directly to see a little bit more clear of a version. We want to know that the students who are engaging in Transfer Main are going to be successful moving into the future. We want to know that this enhanced advising and the seamless transfer relationship are having a positive effect on these transfer students. And so this is the baseline data that we will be building from. Right now, a transfer student from Maine Community College System has about a 50% chance of graduating 4 years after the moment that they transfer, 4 years after they start taking classes here. So this is a student who's already had at least 2 years of community college to earn their associates. And then we're looking at their outcomes 4 years after that to see if they have received their bachelor's after transferring here. So we want to see that number, 50%, continue to tick up. That's the dark green bar at the bottom. That will be our measure of success moving forward. We don't have any outcomes data for you yet. We will this time next year. We will soon thereafter. But I wanted all of you to know that this is the measure that we will be looking at as we move forward with these programs. So with that very quick overview, I would like to leave lots of time for questions about articulations, about Transfer Main, about outcome measures, and about, of course, our communication between the two systems.
Question.
Trustee Alexander?
Just to go, this is me, not you. I just need to understand articulation agreement is for a specific course. And the Transfer Main program is you've completed this degree into for your program. Now you're eligible to enroll and pursue the 4-year option with one of our universities. Is that the distinction?
That is a great question for us to clarify. Yes. So articulations are designed program by program. So a associate's degree here matches up to a bachelor's degree there. Transfer Main is a overlay on top of that. So it uses that pathway to create the system of advising and admissions and continued support for that student after they make the transition. So the articulation is the foundation, and the Transfer Main program is the drapes and carpet on top of it.
Just to follow up, so the articulation agreement is a programmatic agreement, not just one course agreement. Okay,
that is correct. Yeah,
thank you.
Now, I would like to make a little note on that courses change. And so these articulation agreements are dynamic documents that we have to continually revise to ensure that that map for the student is up to date. So there is a course-to-course element, but also it's program to program.
Roger.
Thank you. Jamie, I've got a couple of questions. But first, just wanted to say that I think I've been on the board for 4 years now. And this environment that you're describing is so different than it was 4 years ago and so much more positive. The level of communication and cooperation between the system and the community colleges was, I think, not great some years ago. And this is just a whole different world. So congratulations. I know you have a lot to do with it. So this is excellent. Question about the articulation agreements. I know there are 143. I don't know how much growth potential you see in that number. And if you could perhaps discuss a little bit what obstacles there are to growing that number.
Jamie, can I take a stab at this, and then you can correct me where I'm wrong? So, Roger, this is a great question. Articulation agreements are faculty developed and faculty driven bridges that extend from the community college system to our system. The improved environment that you're talking about is exactly right from my perspective, although I have a bias here. We were in an environment a few years ago where the bridge might go halfway across the river and then just stop. So we're trying to link up the articulation agreements as developed from the MCCS side with those on our side to make sure that they're actually meeting, that they're accurate course by course, and to Jamie's point, program by program. It's quite a bit of work putting everything into a dashboard, which was an enormous effort by Heather and Jamie. Now allows our provosts to go out twice a year and push out their articulation agreements to chairs and directors for faculty review and bring back an updated set instead of dealing with independent groupings of, in some cases, paper-based agreements that over time get lost or misplaced or outdated pretty quickly. So that's a big improvement there. We are hopeful in the future to make the process of updating the actual agreements as simple as possible and as efficient as possible while preserving faculty authority over curricula and over programs so that we're not ever impeding the flow of students who want to come to one of our universities from doing so. I hope that's helpful.
It is, but if you could, that's procedural and getting things set up based. I'm talking more about other obstacles that there may be. Years ago, there was, I think, some generalized opposition from some in faculty and some of the universities to accepting coursework from the community college. It seems like some of that has abated. I assume some of it continues, but how much of a struggle is that? And then maybe this is a question you can't answer, but that 143 in a perfect world would grow to what in 2-3 years? And maybe that's something you can't answer.
So that's a tougher question to answer. It will grow somewhat. As Jamie noted, there are some programs where we will probably never have straight line entry, and we account for that in the actual transfer main agreement because for some of our programs, she mentioned 2 of them, engineering and nursing, there are students who are coming in full-time, first-time who have to really compete for seats in those programs at our universities. So we're careful about managing the flow with a lot of work from the provosts and faculty and deans and directors into those programs. As for improvement in the overall sense of things, one thing that Jamie and our institutional research team have done over the last year and a half is go out and get data, which we share with provosts in different programmatic areas to show outcomes for community college students in corresponding programs in our system. And in many cases, the outcomes are equal to, or in some cases greater than, students who are enrolled full-time, first-time in one of our 4-year programs. So we want to make sure we're honoring faculty by demonstrating that students who are coming to them are qualified to be in their courses and have a chance to succeed. But we're increasingly building data that allows us to share that with them and with their provosts and show those outcomes.
Thanks. And just one other, if I could, again, the cooperation is just really taken off, it seems, and that's great. What's our opportunity to affirmatively market to the community college students these new programs which are available? What's our ability to directly talk with them in one way or another?
So we'll be doing that very directly, because as what Jamie described as the warm handoff, advising between the two systems, MCCS advisors and UMS advisors, it's no longer an exchange from point to point. It's simultaneous and overlapping. So students who sign up for Direct Admit are never lacking advising on both ends until they make the formal final transition post completion of their AA into one of our programs. They're always going to have a net beneath them and people helping them from both sides. And I would note this is all happening in the context of our MCCS counterparts adopting a new student information system right now. So faculty here and others will recall the move to Brightspace a couple of years ago. It's a big endeavor. They're doing that as they're also providing data, coming to meetings, helping build out that administrative overlay that Jamie and Heather have been describing.
And if I can jump in with a couple more details, we have also, and we continue to do so historically and continually, tabled at each of these institutions periodically. So we send our admissions advisors to the community colleges so that they can talk directly to students who are interested in transfer. In addition, with the Transfer Maine project, Maine Community College System is facilitating some of our marketing for us. So they are identifying every student who is eligible for the Transfer Maine program in terms of the program that they are currently enrolled in, as well as their GPA requirements and a couple of other areas. And they text message and email those students directly over and over, repeatedly over the course of the semester, to tell them about the Transfer Maine opportunity and get the information into their hands as early as possible. We identify those students as soon as they complete 30 credits. And so they have a full year between the first communication about the Transfer Maine program and the time it is to actually transfer, to think about this, to talk to their advisors, and to really look at their next steps. So lots of communication to the student in terms of marketing.
Thanks, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Elise?
Thanks. Roger asked two of my questions, but the other one that I had is just kind of looking at state workforce issues. Nursing is obviously a big gap. So do you have plans I know it's great that it's such a popular program or nurses are graduating, but there's still a huge gap workforce wise. So do you envision kind of meeting that need in the transfer agreement in the future? Or is it kind of, we're waiting to see how things are going? And then, just a comment to say, from the outside, we see what a tremendous opportunity this was, but internally a tremendous amount of work. So just want to commend you, Jamie and Jeff, on this really student-centric, faculty-informed approach. I know just hearing you all talk about it, I know it's a tremendous amount of work. So thank you.
I can respond well, thank you, first of all, for the compliments. They should be directed primarily at Jamie and Heather and our provosts, who've done an enormous amount of work in all of this. I will say, yes, Trustee Baldacci, in response to your first question, we are seeking to grow MCCS nursing pathways into our programs. And I will also say, without going into too many details, the provosts and I continue to work together on ways to grow our nursing programming at all levels within our system. We have an example of something that'll be coming forward shortly through the chief academic officers and onto this body. We're looking at the undergraduate and graduate nursing programming at all times, and we have what I think all the provosts who are involved in this would agree is a remarkably collegial set of nursing directors and nursing faculty across our system. The nursing directors work together every day of the year, and that's no exaggeration. So that's very much a strategic approach to growing nursing opportunity and growing nursing options across our system. And Joe Zakis is nodding, so I feel better about what I just said. Thank you.
Other question? If not, I just have one brief comment. Jamie, maybe you can answer this. My perception over the years I've been involved with community college is a lot of these students are place-bound. So are we offering transfer opportunities to courses that are primarily online, or are we expecting them to actually physically move to take the classes?
It's a mix. So many of the programs that we've identified are programs that are online. So out of that 95, a significant portion of those have online opportunities for our students. It's also, if you are a student at, let's say, Central Maine Community College and you are place-bound, the online offerings could be at Presque Isle or Farmington or USM or UMaine. They are all around the state. And so a student does have several pathways typically to choose from. Maybe an on-campus works better for their learning style, and so they would end up at UMA perhaps. Or maybe they need a little more flexibility and need to take advantage of an online program that's offered through Fort Kent. And for many of the programs, they do have lots of options of where they can go. And they identify that their top options as part of this process. And we start talking to them about what those options might entail. And we walk them through with that solid foundation of advising every step of the way to make sure that they're making a choice that will fit the lifestyle that they have. So some programs are, of course, going to be on campus just by nature of the curriculum and the coursework itself, but many of them are online options. And of course, lots of students do have options outside of the major that they might have started with. So maybe you are a behavioral science student for your associates, but you're interested in perhaps going on for a business degree. We work with those students as well to make sure that they're choosing a pathway that will fit with their goals and hopes and desires and is optimized to be able to take advantage of as many credits as possible.
Thanks. Other questions? Jen, question?
I just wanted to note that for students who are place-bound, UMA has centers throughout the state that also have nursing capabilities there too. So that's in person, but not on one of the campuses.
Other questions? Jamie, yeah, thank you for an excellent presentation. It's really good to see the program.
I think Donna had a question actually.
No, sorry, I couldn't see. It's going.
Yeah, recognizing how complicated this all is, and it's truly complicated. I'm wondering if you've been, or you utilize at all, AI in any of this process.
I can say that without giving away too much inside baseball, Trustee Loring, we're increasingly using AI every day. Now, I'm far behind my colleague, Vice Chancellor Lowe. In fact, I think he's orbited the Earth several times as I've been moving across just one continent. But we are, and we see further uses in this area and in many others within academic and student affairs. And it's becoming more and more evident every day that we have a permanent opportunity to be building AI into what we do. And I can share more details at another time and share a demo as well. But yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we move to the next tab 4. And Jeff, you'd like to introduce this topic and introduce the speaker.
Thank you. So this is in response to some really good feedback from trustees at recent board meetings in particular, who noted that they often get to hear from this committee about the academic dimensions of academic and student affairs, but less so about student success initiatives specifically. We have many of those in our strategic plan. We have many of those that are alive and running at our universities every day of the week. By way of the beginning of a series of presentations, I asked Scott Marzilli from the University of Maine to share a little bit today about the work that he's been doing with proactive advising and leading to student success outcomes that I think you'll find to be pretty impressive. And I want to rush to say to all the other universities and their presidents and provosts, there will be future presentations in this series by our other universities. I just picked Scott because I was in a meeting with him last month as I was preparing materials for this ASA meeting. And so he was top of mind at the time, but we'll come forward with other presentations from our other universities in subsequent ASA meetings. And with that, I'm happy to introduce Dr. Scott Marzilli, Associate Provost for Student Success and Innovation at the University of Maine.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And thank you all very much for letting me come and speak to you for 15 or so minutes and then have some time for question and answers. If you see me turning, I do have a stopwatch on for myself. I can talk about student success and about all the great things that the faculty and staff and the president and provost are working on here at the University of Maine and University of Maine at Machias. So I'll just, if you see me looking over, that's just making sure I'm not going over. Before we start, I do want to say that I am lucky enough to be here in front of you, but all the work that I'm going to share with you is a culmination of faculty, staff, administration, everyone working together to make this initiative that I'm going to share with you possible. And like Jeff said, there's numerous programs from Gateways to Success to RLEs to Pathways to Careers to AI chatbots, a lot of different things that we are doing here and others across the system are doing. But we're going to limit this presentation to really looking at how we had all of these remarkable advisors and student success teams wanting to talk to students and wanting to reach out to students, but how could we work together with the faculty to create really a seamless pathway back and forward between faculty and the staff. And so I'll share that with you today. So Jamie's going to help me with the slides. If we can move to the next slide. So what this slide shows is a couple of things. One, it shows that the University of Maine has been very consistent over the last 10 years with respect to its retention. It's been at around 76%, give or take of 1 or 2% up or down over the last 10 years. I've added two other groups here for you to see. One is University of Maine Hanover peers, their average is 80%, and then New England land grants is 88%. But I also added here, to put this in context, the acceptance rates of these groups. So at the University of Maine, we accept roughly 93% of the students over the last 5 years. As you can see, the Hanover peers are 82% and other land grants is 68%. So we are very proud of the fact that we are here for all students that within Maine, and as long as they meet our admissions requirements, we accept them. And once we accept them, then it is our responsibility to help them succeed, help them graduate. But in order to graduate, you have to get through that very first year. So if we can go to the next slide. So what we know is that there historically, and these factors are across the nation. These aren't just in Maine or at the University of Maine. These are across the nation, that we know that students that have lower high school GPAs, lower preparation in high school, they tend to struggle a little bit more when they reach the four-year university. First generation Pell and rural students. We know this. This is again, across the nation. This is not unique to the University of Maine. But what we also know is that, if you can go to the next slide, is that very rarely do students come with just one in one of these groups. Students range from having no pre-enrollment factors to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. So what this figure shows is that students that come that were in none of those categories that I showed you in the previous slide, they have an 85% first year retention. And then when you add one factor, and it could be any of those 4 factors, they're not in any specific order, you drop down about 12%. Then if they have any 2 factors, it goes down, again. And then all the way to when you have 4 factors, your retention rate here during these cohorts was 43%. So the goal is always to support all students. But specifically, if we could support the students with multiple historical factors that influence their retention, then we could bring up the overall retention of the entire University of Maine and University of Maine at Machias. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Jamie. So what we wanted to do is, our goal was to reduce these performance gaps that I just showed you. And what we intended to accomplish was, instead of looking at individual groups, so instead of looking at just the Pell students or just rural students or such, we thought, what could we create that would support all students? And then the early identification of these students struggling. So if we could get into the classroom, if we could have eyes and ears in the classroom, and we could know right away in the first couple of weeks which students aren't showing up, which students aren't doing their homework, then we could have these teams to support the students. And that's where our faculty come in. Our faculty see the students more than any professional staff does. Our faculty see them, if it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, they're seeing them 3 times a week over the entire semester. If we can work in collaboration with our faculty, then that's the way that we could help our student success teams, and that's the next bullet. Our student success teams know when to reach out to these students, because I'm sure you all know, I have a 22-year-old that goes here to the University of Maine. I always ask him, hey, hey, Ross, how are you doing? And he always tells me, Dad, I'm doing just great. Then it comes closer to, midterms or finals, and he says, Dad, I just want to tell you, I know I told you I was doing just great, but in this one class, it didn't work for me, and I stopped going and I withdrew. And I thought, well, why wouldn't he have told me that earlier? I could have, given him some advice or some help. And many of our advisors who in the past were reaching out to their students, they were told the same thing. We're doing great. The advisors say, are you sure? Oh my gosh, this is the best semester I've ever had. And then towards the end of the semester, when the advisor's starting to work with the student to get them enrolled in the next set of courses, they say, well, you got an F in this course and you withdrew from that course. Oh, but I was doing really great in that. And so what the advisors are telling us is, if we could somehow get inside the classroom and know, it would really help us as well. And so that's what I'm going to share with you, is this collaboration between our faculty and our professional staff. One important note here is that this initiative was aimed at all first-year students. It did not it did not look at specific subsets. And we felt like if we designed this well, that the students that needed additional support, whether they were in one of those subsets or not, would receive that additional support. If you could go to the next slide. So what we developed I arrived in February of 23, right? Just about 10 days ago was my 2-year anniversary here. And one of the things that a goal was in working with Provost Follen and the team was, what can we do to move what I just shared with you into operation? And so we created what was called the Black Bear Early Alert. These are 2 campaigns. There's a 2-week campaign and a 6-week campaign. The 2-week campaign, and what we do is that this is for all first-year students. So we don't do it specific to just looking at chemistry or just looking at physics or English. We look at any courses that are assigned to that first-year student, and that becomes important as we continue to grow early college. We have first-year students that are coming in taking sophomore and junior level classes. In the past, if we only looked at first-year courses, we would have missed those students. Now we're able to gather and have a holistic package around all first-year students. The 2-week alert, while I know that seems early, and trust me, it seems early for our faculty as well, but one of the most important things about that 2-week alert is there are just students that are just not on track. And what I mean by that is they've downloaded the wrong the wrong math homework app, and they're doing their homework, they're turning it in, but the instructor says, I'm not receiving it. Well, they do an alert, our advisor reaches out to them, they interact, and it could be as simple as, you have the wrong app, let me get you the right app. Or just recently, a faculty member was using clickers to do some homework assignments in class assignments, and also take roll. And the faculty member said, this student has not shown up yet. But the student said, I've been coming there every day. And what happened was the student was logged into the wrong Wi-Fi. And it was just a correction of that allowed the student to now get back on track. The other thing that this allows is it allows the student success teams to become the advocate for the student, not in week 8 or week 10 or at the end of the semester, but in week 2. And they're starting to build some really strong relationships with these students. Week 6 functions more like a midterm grade. While not all faculty have midterms by week 6, a lot of faculty, the majority of faculty, are starting to understand what is the student's current grade. Are they at risk of failing? And if they do, they send out another alert during that period of time. And at that time, the advisors now are reaching out to the students and saying, it's been shared with us that your grade in this class is maybe not where you would like it to be. Let's see if we can set up a plan. Let's see if we can get you the resources that you need. So it is very, very proactive, very, very partnering, not only with the faculty and the staff, but also the faculty, staff, and students are all working now in conjunction together to move the students from where they were to where they would like to be. Next slide. So this is a summary of the 23-24 campaign. We had 81 faculty and staff providing support. So these are the members of the success team. So each student had at least 2 members of a success team. And we were able to bring what once were these separated success team members, to bring them into one success team. I'll give you an example. If you have an honor student who's an athlete who is a science major, in the past, honors would be reaching out to this student, the athletics support would be reaching out to the student, and then the advisor. Now, those are all part of one success team. And so when a student gets an alert, all 3 of those individuals are alerted at the same time, and they work in conjunction with one another to make sure that student feels supported and moves forward. We had 181 instructors participate over this 1 year. We were able to look at 742 students. About 40% of our first year class had at least one alert provided to us by the faculty. And this is really the most important part. Before this started, we wouldn't have had this. We had over 4,000 interactions between faculty, student, and staff that were all triggered by this alert. And again, it's all done by a case management approach. So once a student is referenced for needing more support, a case is opened, and all these individuals work together until the case is closed. And then the faculty member gets shared that as well, that the case has been closed and this is the outcome of this outreach. One of the really great things is, while I said we weren't focusing on any specific subgroup of students, just by doing this, 75% of those 4,000 outreaches went to students with one or more of those pre-enrollment factors that had contributing to the lower retention. So again, while we were not at all focusing particularly on any subgroup, the groups, our most vulnerable students, received the majority of the feedback. Next slide. So this is just to kind of show you our progress with the faculty. With anything new, I think it's difficult. Faculty are already stretched with their research and their service and teaching load. They're already stretched, and to ask them, we also need you to do this for us. there was some time to get buy-in from the faculty. I think one of the great things we did was we partnered with Deb Allen and our institutional research, and every semester I get an update, a really simple infographic that we share back with the faculty saying, thank you for your support. Your actions created the rest of what I'm going to share with you. And it's really been working well. We had 63% of the instructors for the spring, and we're on track for another increase this last fall. So the faculty are starting to just get used to this coming. That's not to say that it's not still, for some of these classes that have 400, 500, 600 people in them. We're trying to work with those faculty to make it so it's not a huge lift, but the faculty have just been really great. Some really quick things looking at term 1 GPA, so fall GPA. We know that fall GPA is actually a strong predictor of whether or not a student's going to be retained to the following fall. And the first year GPA for all students increased by 3%, but what's really exciting on top of that is that we had a 6% increase with students, our most vulnerable students. We had a 6% increase in their GPA. If you could go to the next slide. There's a couple more slides, and then we'll be done. This just shows you students that were in none of those subgroups. You can look at their GPAs have increased a little bit throughout the years. There was a 0.06 increase in fall of 23. But again, what's really great is that what you see is that for the group that had any of those pre-enrollment historical barriers, it was 2.75, 2.78, and then for some reason the number didn't come, but it's 2.96. So we saw a significant increase in the, and this is fall and spring GPA combined, we saw a significant increase in the students' GPA. The next slide. This is one of the most exciting slides, and you never know until the end of the year, till the end of the project, how things are going to turn out. But what you can see here is that you have the fall 21-22 cohorts, those two averages, and then the fall 23 cohort. What you can see is that while all the cohorts, the no barrier 1, 2, and 3 or more barrier cohorts, they all increased. The largest increases were in the groups that had the multiple pre-enrollment barriers there. So 3 or 4 barriers, those students increased by 12%, 9%, 11%, and then 4%. So at the very beginning of this presentation, one of the things I said was, if we could bring up all students, specifically our most vulnerable students, and we can help them succeed, then that ultimately should have a positive impact on our retention. And the last slide shows that we actually had record retention from the 2023 cohort. So we went up to 83.4%. Now, there's a lot of other student success things going on and a lot of other projects, but this is one project that I feel very confident in saying had a lot to do with this record retention, only because we've always had these great success teams waiting to support these students. And now they're being, with this partnership with the instructors, they're proactively working with the students throughout the semester to help them stay on track so that they don't fall off and then ultimately not be retained. But Jeff, I hope that's what you were hoping for. The last slide is just a thank you to this group. Thank you for your support. And if you had any questions at all for me, be more than happy to answer any.
Thank you very much indeed. Questions for Scott? Barbara.
First, thank you very much. A very, very detailed and interesting presentation. I have one question suggestion, and that is, in these kinds of presentations, it's very helpful to, in the first part of it, to link what you're talking about to the obligations for retention under the strategic plan and how your presentation is linked to achieving the University of Maine's retention and persistence goals as you were required to have under the strategic plan. But the last slide got us right where we need to be, and that is to link your program to that important metric. And thank you very much. So second, it would be great for other universities, not today, but to identify best practices here and discuss how this is being promoted internally to the other universities. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Roger.
Thank you. Scott, again, a great presentation. Just one question for you. The presence of these risk factors is a challenge. Do you have any idea what percentage of students have come in with zero risk factors?
Yes, well, based on the 2023 cohort, it was 41%. So 41% of our first year students have zero, are not involved in any of those subsets.
And
So 59% had at least one.
And I don't know if you have any data on this, but is that 41% less than it was 5-10 years ago, more than it was? Do we have any information on that?
I'll look into that, Roger, and get that back to the group. We do have it, but I'll get back to you. I think it's stayed relatively stable,
Okay.
but I'll share that with you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Donna?
Yeah, I don't know if I missed this or not, but you mentioned barriers all the way through. I'm wondering what you're considering as barriers.
So historically, students across the nation that are Pell eligible or students that are first gen, historically their outcomes are not as strong as students that are not first gen or Pell eligible. Those are two that a lot of people you hear about programming for. Here we also had students that are rural, so rural students, and then students that are coming a little bit underprepared. The way that we had underprepared was any student that has below a 3.0 high school GPA is a student that when you look at the data over years, the student that has under the 3.0 GPA does not have the same outcomes that students above a 3.0 GPA have.
Thanks. Other question? Donna, you still have your hand up? Okay.
David, can I just add my thanks to that already shared and just appreciation for Scott for this presentation. And I'll wrap this up by saying I had to chuckle. Scott's describing being the father of a 22-year-old UMaine son who always answers the question, "How are you doing?" with, "I'm doing great, Dad." As the father of a 21-year-old UMaine son who always answers the same question in the same way, I have nothing but empathy for my colleague, Dr. Marzilli. So Scott, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, very thought-provoking as well.
Thank you very much.
And on behalf of the committee, thank you so much. The next tab we have is the student mental health and ASA work plan update. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm subbing in part for Heather Ball here, but also adding a little bit of my own. So what you have here is a report required by our work plan, the timing just slightly off from the actual work described in the plan. So with apologies to trustees who were waiting for a payoff beyond the final paragraph, it's almost there. So trustees will recall that as part of the strategic initiatives funding that the Chancellor and Vice Chancellor Lowe identified last summer, early fall, with the board's input and support, we directed some dollars toward improving student mental health resources in two areas. And those areas were identified actually in June by a combination of a half-day retreat involving all of the chief student affairs officers from our universities and a mental health task force report prepared by the University of Maine Machias group last spring semester. And we came out with two takeaways, two areas where we wanted to make some strategic improvements in the area of student mental health. The first is a new telehealth resource. We had a previous telehealth resource that was not broadly used, had low activity, had not been well marketed. We let the contract expire, and we've been working toward and are extremely close to now identifying the potential expansion of an existing resource already used by two of our universities, University of Maine at Fort Kent and Maine Law, with some strongly positive outcomes already at both of those institutions. So we're actually meeting this Wednesday with the chief student affairs officers and a representative from that vendor. I will also add that a University of Southern Maine faculty member representing the system-wide faculty governance council has been a part of that group and a key contributor to the work of honing in on one vendor. We also have a second commitment for those strategic dollars, which is to improve faculty and professional staff onboarding and ongoing professional development for those two groups across our system. I think everyone here knows, presidents and provosts and everyone else, you come to a university as a new employee or as a new faculty member, you have a range of questions involving both access to academic resources, information about healthcare, information about housing, information about childcare, all the kinds of things that are part of starting a life either in a place you've already lived, but in a new employer, or a place that's new to you and a new employer. So we're working on that as well. I will say there are challenges. Telehealth resources typically work best when strongly and consistently marketed to students. And again, we have to improve in that area to see the kind of return on the investment we'd like to see. And also with respect to onboarding and ongoing faculty development, understandably, each of our universities has a different idea about what will work best for their faculty and their students and our professional staff. So we're looking at options other than a one-size-fits-all in that area. But we're obliged to figure out the telehealth resource first and the overall pricing of that resource, and then working with the presidents and the chief student affairs officers, figuring out how to apportion the rest of those one-time strategic dollars for faculty development and ongoing faculty support purposes. And of course, the broadest challenge of all, I don't want to set it aside or ignore it, is that these are one-time dollars. So our universities will need to make decisions in the future about which of these resources and to what extent these resources are worth investing in as we move forward. But that's where we are as of today. And that's the end of the story that we're close to in both areas. And I'm, of course, be happy to come back and report out on outcomes when we get to that point. Happy to answer any questions that trustees may have.
Robin?
Yeah, I had some trouble with this report, to be blunt, Jeff and others. I didn't see a discussion of the strategic plan here. I didn't see the internal process by which you prioritize certain things. I was very concerned that there was no bottoms-up research in terms of asking the affected population what it is they needed and why these particular proposals were presented. And there was no discussion of the financial aspects of the ideas presented here that I could see. So I had trouble figuring out what I should do with this document. And I'm really hoping that perhaps an offline discussion could result in a more helpful document for trustee purposes now, not questioning the intent or the goodwill going on internally. Thank you.
I'd be happy to talk to you, Trustee Alexander, but candidly, most of what you just described is really management of the process on the part of system staff, in this case, me, working with the chancellor and the vice chancellors. And I mean, we have a grasp of the pricing and we have a grasp of the work that we need to do here. And again, because of where we are in the process, a greater level of detail in this report wasn't possible. With respect to strategic plan outcomes, I know you have a concern there as well. We, of course, intend to report out once we get these two resources in place on those outcomes, either at the next strategic planning committee meeting or another appropriate meeting, which could be here. So thank you.
Any questions again? Seeing none. Jeff, you're on again for the next item. Financial implications of new academic programs.
Thank you, and I hope this is helpful to the trustees. So again, this came my way via Trustee McMahon. I know there's been an interest in this, and we're figuring out how we might operationalize this in the way that we bring forward proposals for new academic programs. Again, my conversation is yet to come with the provost in this regard, but really the question that has been put to me is, can you give the trustees a little more information in proposals for new programs about the financial implications of those programs going forward? You've all been in recent committee meetings where there have been questions about good questions. Will you need to hire more faculty, whether full-time or part-time, to deliver this program? And if so, how many and when and at what cost? Will you need other kinds of instructional resources to deliver this program? Does the modality of the program affect the cost of delivery? And then very importantly, all trustees know that our provosts and faculty and deans and directors chairs do quite a bit of work trying to determine to the greatest degree of accuracy possible potential enrollment for these programs 1 year, 2 years, 3 years out. That is the biggest challenge of all. We have areas, and you all know what they are, where we've vastly outstripped even our most rosy projections for enrollment for new programs within a couple of years, and other areas where enrollment has been slower than anticipated, and in some other areas where we hit right on the mark. So we'll be working with the provosts, coming back to the trustees to have a discussion of a proposed way to build some of this information into academic program proposals. I would like to do that as parsimoniously as possible. To be honest, we already ask quite a bit of our faculty and our provosts in what they put forward now. And as you all know, the range of questions that they face, good questions from this committee is broad and also deep. So we want to have a mechanism whereby they can provide the information that trustees need and provide it with as much clarity and detail as possible. I do support the underlying idea here that we can bring some measure of clarity to the question of the cost of delivering academic programs. And as you all know, we have an annual process, annual academic program review, where we do some of that work as well. But bringing it forward as part of new program proposals, we think could be a good step. And we're at the beginning stages, but I did want to mention it to the provost trustees today, invite their comment, but also invite the comment of provost presidents, others who would like to speak to this subject.
Barbara.
Thank you. I have been on this, I think I'm in my third year, and I have rarely not seen a very good description as part of the background materials for new programs or expanding existing programs. I have rarely not seen a discussion of the obvious, which is how many faculty we have to develop these programs. Do we need new faculty? What is the expectation? And will this increase our E&G budget? That kind of discussion has routinely been included in most of the materials that I have seen. We had an episode, a meeting or so ago, then in which I made it clear that I thought that was missing the normal discussion and requirement of justifying a new program in the background materials. It was not in the materials we were looking at, and that sparked this discussion, but it has routinely appeared. And it is discussed in a specific section of the background materials that I have seen when a university comes forward with the new program. So I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel here. And I would urge just go back and look at the material submitted with most of the new programs in the past couple years, and you will see the specific discussion of this issue normally done in a way that's perfectly appropriate and helpful for me in reviewing the program. So I don't think we need to do a lot more than what I think historically has been done. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Roger, you had your hand up? Go ahead, Roger.
Thank you. I think Barbara made the points I was going to make. I understand, Jeff, everything you're saying, but I recall, and I apologize, I didn't do my homework before this meeting because I was going to try to dig up a couple of past ones. And I think that they were very 10,000 foot in view, but how many new students projected, additional space requirements anticipated, additional faculty costs anticipated, stuff like that. And I thought it was helpful. And it isn't because we don't want to consider a program that may not break even, it may lose money. That may be good reasons for doing it, but at least they have that context. And again, I'm sorry I didn't go back and dig through a few past meetings, but I think there has been some kind of information like that previously. Thanks.
David, this is helpful. I have heard trustees share views on both sides of this issue. My only urging on this subject would be that we not cross the lines between FFT and ASA, that we not develop some kind of mechanism whereby we're attempting to provide information across the two committees. That would make the work of both committees infinitely more difficult than it is already, and they're both already challenging in my perspective. So I'm respectful of what Barbara said, respectful of what Roger said. We certainly want to provide all the information that trustees would like to see. I will say, when presented with the same proposals, there are times when different trustees view what they're seeing as being more or less substantive. And that's a difference of engagement that I can't control, that provost can't control. But we do want to provide a baseline of information to Barbara's point that gives people what they should expect to see and answers questions in a clear way.
Okay.
And I think I agree and support your distinction. We're not the budgeting committee. And when the budget for the university as a whole and all of its programs comes to FFT, they will see increased costs or not for new programs or existing programs or whatever. So that decision lies elsewhere. But just as a matter of good planning and understanding the implications of a new program on existing staff, on the need to recruit or promote existing staff, and the idea of trying to determine student potential enrollment in the program. I mean, that's just good planning for a program. And that level of information is very important to indicate that it's a well-designed program for us to consider. That's how I looked at it. Thank you.
Other comments, questions? If not, we're a little bit ahead, and we built in a 10-minute break. So why don't we take 15 minutes and let everybody stretch and do everything else, and we will come back at what it was going to be 10:50, 10:55. I think it's 10:55. Welcome back, everyone. I have 10:55, so we will reconvene the meeting. And the next item on the agenda is an update on the 90 credit hour applied bachelor's program from Jeff.
Thank you, Trustee McMahon. We had a bit of a discussion about this at the beginning of the meeting if you weren't with us. I think the main thing I want to say is I'm persuaded by the comments shared by three of our faculty representatives, Ivan and Joe and Lisa, about the need for additional information. I'm going to put together a resource page on these 90 credit programs, share the link with our Faculty Governance Council, all of our faculty, senate, and assembly presidents, provosts, our university presidents, trustees, of course, and others, and just have a one-stop where we can share updates on progress, the NECHI guidance, background materials. We previously shared some articles last fall with the trustees at their request, what's happening regionally and nationally in this area. But I am persuaded by the good comments shared earlier that having a place where faculty in particular can go for the latest information rather than having to come looking for it or to wait for an update to be shared with them, I think that's the way to go here. So I'll be doing that in the next week or so with my staff here. And when we get that ready to go, we will blast out that link to all parties, add additional information as available, and keep it updated with regularity. So that's my main, beyond what I've already shared. I guess I can just briefly say, if you're not up to date on the chronology here, so we spoke with the board about this in public session on January 13. A week later, the chancellor put out his first message on the 22nd on this topic, and sharing the basics of the work and how we'll be pursuing it. I've since met with the provost, of course, once with the Faculty Governance Council, with our registrars. I meet with our enrollment managers later this week. So it's a series of meetings as I come to different groups. And again, as per standard practice, the chancellor, of course, meets with each of our universities during the spring and fall semesters, and I meet with each faculty senate or assembly during the spring and fall semester. So I'll be making visits as usual there and answering any questions in person whenever possible that come from interested or concerned faculty, engaged faculty, whatever their orientation toward the subject is, and we'll share as much information as we can. And David, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that weren't addressed earlier in the meeting.
Jeff, some of the faculty reps who spoke and had to go and teach class, which is obviously their primary job, perhaps you could put a note out to the faculty reps, just some of what you said.
Yep.
So at least they're fully informed.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Other questions from the trustees on this subject, Roger?
Thank you, Jeff. Could you just remind us of the prospective timeline here, particularly as it relates to NECHI and the State Department of Education? Is that looking like?
So we have communicated with the State Department of Education through Vice Chancellor Dorsey and are awaiting word there. We don't expect that will take terribly long. We have, and I shared this with some faculty a week and a half ago, thanks to the conversation the chancellor and I had with NECHI President Larry Shaw. We have reserved space on ourselves for the commission's end of November, that's fall 2025 meeting. We would work backwards from there. I already heard from several faculty, all thoughtful at the Faculty Governance Council meeting, dubious about the prospect of moving intent to plan, followed by full program proposals forward in time to make that deadline. But that's our aspiration. We're working with the provosts and with the faculty who are developing these programs and are excited about them to move them forward thoughtfully as efficiently as we can.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, let's move to the next agenda item, information only.
Thank you. Trustees will recall that in some recent meetings, we've come forward from a couple different universities seeking to change the name of an existing program so that the name for students and in the marketplace is more consistent with the current nomenclature in the field. Here we have the same request from the University of Southern Maine. With no changes whatsoever to the curriculum, they have asked to change the name of a degree itself, the degree awarded for the program, because the name of the degree has become outdated in that field. The field is school psychology, and they would like their students to be able to hold the degree that is recognized by employers, and that is the naming needed to get a job in this field and be successful in Maine or elsewhere in the field of school psychology. So we went into the board policy on this subject, and if you're interested, it's board policy 305.1. Program approval, review, and elimination procedures. From there, you're led to the corresponding administrative practice letter, or APL, which for the truly interested is X-P.2. And what you find there are the two criteria that apply that would trigger a substantive change, meaning there'd be a whole different process, and it would come forward for close consideration by the trustees and for their vote and approval. Neither of those criteria is touched, and in fact, changing the name of a degree itself is addressed nowhere in board policy or APL so far as my staff and I have been able to determine. There's no change in curriculum, there's no change in methodology, there's no change in geographic activity for the program. So this comes to you as an informational item. I will compliment the University of Southern Maine in saying that Provost Tuchinski and the academic leaders that he worked with laid out very clearly the need and desire for this change such that their students graduating with a degree, moving from the former Masters of Science to the new term education specialist, necessary for them in the marketplace, helpful for them in landing jobs in Maine and staying in Maine, serving our schools as school psychologists. I also took this before coming forward to Trustee McMahon and putting it on the agenda. It went to the Chief Academic Officers Council's meeting. The provosts were unanimously in support of this change, saw no conflict, competition, or difficulty with any other existing program in education or in psychology or elsewhere. So this comes to you as an informational item, but because it's rare, I wanted to bring it forward and explain it very clearly why we've pursued it the way we have, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the trustees may have.
Questions? Seeing none. The next item, go.
Tab 9, scheduling note for this group, in particular for the students who aren't with us in large numbers today, but also for anyone else. As a reminder, with help from the Chancellor and with the permission of Chair Riley, I came forward last year and requested that the tenure meeting held every spring be separated from a regular ASA meeting, because we found ourselves at the point of trying to do 4.5 hours worth of business in 3 hours. And everyone felt it was important not to squeeze the provosts into any narrower a time frame, because trustees do want to hear about each spring's applicants for tenure from across our universities. So as a note for this group, and because tenure is fundamentally and quite sensitively a personnel matter, above and beyond almost any other personnel matter, the February 24 ASA meeting is a tenure-only meeting. There will be one tab. We will go into executive session at the beginning of the meeting and come out to address that one tab. So I'll send David a note to the student reps and also the faculty reps, not all of whom could be here today, advising them of this fact. But we will devote that time in that meeting to a discussion of personnel matters, which is the review of tenure applications coming forward this spring from our universities. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that anyone might have.
Question? Could I have a motion to go into executive session under 1 MRSA section 405(6)A to discuss the evaluation of personnel and the consideration and discussion of appointments, evaluations, employment, and duties.
So moved.
Moved by Barbara, as a second.
Second?
Second by Roger. Beth, could you please take the roll?
Yes. Trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Alexander,
Yes.
trustee Martin,
Yes.
trustee Cates.
Yes.
The motion passes. I'll move you into executive session.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for your participation. So the tab 10, at the time of hire, University of Southern Maine. Any questions or discussion? If not, I will read the text of the proposed motion. That the Academic and Student Affairs Committee forwards this item to the March 9th, 10th, 2025 Board of Trustees meeting for approval of the following resolution. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves tenure at the time of hire, Associate Professor in the Department of Environmental Science, with tenure to be effective September 1, 2024. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Beth, could you take the roll, please?
Trustee McMahon.
Yeah.
Trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Alexander,
Yes.
trustee Martin,
Yes.
trustee Cates.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you all for your participation. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.